Back to the VHS vault. I'm VHS Jace. That is Jason Roy Gaston. And I don't need to hype up what we're talking about tonight. I really don't. We're talking about Aliens, the 1986 James Cameron sequel to the Ridley Scott horror classic Alien.
It is probably, in my mind, not only the best sequel ever made, it is one of the best action movies ever made. I love this film so much.
I I saw this film in the cinema by myself on a glorious Saturday afternoon in 1986. Snuck into this film, not knowing what expecting to see, probably expecting to see more of Alien, a horror film, and coming out of this experience shook on another level because it was exciting, it was tension filled, it was scary, it was everything. It was like one of those film experiences to a 12, 13-year old I would have been at the time that just rocked me in all the best ways. And a new God was born that day, and his name was James Cameron.
Indeed, indeed. So, I did not see this in cinemas, as you so eloquently put it, because I was only 10, and the nearest cinema was 45 miles away because I lived out in the middle of BFE, Texas. And I did not even know that this movie existed until one of my friends came up to me on the playground, and he was excited. And he said, "Dude, did you know that there's a new Alien movie?" And
Mm.
Alien was one of those movies that played every year on network television, and it was like an event. You always came to watch Alien, and I was like, "No, I did not know that there
Uh,
was a new Alien movie. Is it scary?" He goes, "A little bit, but it's mostly just really cool." And I did not see it until a couple of years later, whenever it hit Showtime, and I was a believer after that. It is, as I said, not only the best sequel of all time, it is probably one of the best action movies ever made.
we've just explained our first time watching it, but really we didn't. That wasn't the first time watching the completed film. That took a few years later when the special edition was released,
Oh, yes.
which I do consider to this day the absolute pinnacle Aliens film.
It is the
Um,
definitive version. Yes,
it
I
is a
agree.
definitive version. Definitely expands the opening a bit more, and then there's that great sentry gun sequence, which I just love so much. No, but either way, whatever version you've seen a sci-fi classic. And the most interesting thing and the brilliant thing about this film, Jason, was to take a horror concept and put a military twist on it. And it completely just by default changed the genre to this exciting action piece.
I
Um,
love the fact that they went to 20th Century Fox and said, "We want to do a sequel to Alien." And they were just like, "Yeah, I mean, that's a given, but we haven't heard any concepts that are exciting to us." And this one producer looked at them and said, "Alien 2, this time it's war." And they were like, "Tell me more," as the cash register sound effects go off in my brain. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a
Have you ever
fantastic movie.
heard that? I think James Cameron's nixed his story in the bud, but I just loved it when he went in to pitch for the film. He apparently went up to the whiteboard and put Alien and put the S and then put two strokes for dollar signs.
That's what I've
I
heard.
kind of wish that had happened. I know it's not true, but I would just wish that had happened.
You know,
It's pretty accurate.
if the stories are good enough, I believe they happened, whether the people who were involved in them say they didn't or not. That's just how I choose to roll. I like delusion and I like exaggeration.
I just think what they did was a masterstroke. This is like the masterclass on taking a concept and putting a completely fresh twist on it and turning it into a franchise. And what a brilliant way to set up a franchise, because what it allowed to do, just not only for this but going forward, is each film could be its own identity.
Yes.
And this film certainly is its own identity. It to me, watching it again, it gives you like feeling of Vietnam movies. And in a way,
It
it kind
really
of
does. Yeah.
the military kind of look like, if you look at the ship, it's like a mix between a helicopter and one of their, aircraft from that period. It just felt like that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the Marines are just amazing. Like
Yeah.
it's all really built around those characters. And if you can't get that military bond, those characters right, the film doesn't work. And it was so strong because of that.
I remember somebody said one time, and I wish I could take credit for this, but they said the reason why this film is so effective and the reason why you love it so much is because you know these characters, you know their names. So whenever they die, you're like, oh no, Vasquez, oh no, Hudson. Um, you just know who they are. It was in a review of Alien Resurrection, which I may be jumping the gun here a little bit, but somebody once said you don't know these characters like you know the characters from Aliens. There are people nowadays who have basically founded the Church of Hudson because they love the character so much, and you're not going to do that for any of these characters. And I'm just like, my secret, my deep dark secret is that I kind of like Alien Resurrection. I'm sorry, but the underwater sequence was awesome. But I had to agree. I had to fully agree with that. But I do like what you said, that each one of these movies can be their own thing. They can be their own genre. And for a while, it seemed like that's what they were doing. Because, the first one was siege horror. The second one was, military action. The third one was kind of like a wild animal on the loose movie.
Yeah,
And then
melancholy, like survival movie.
Yeah. And then, we get to the fourth movie and it's a movie about finding yourself. And then we got Prometheus, which was definitely its own thing. And then we got Alien Covenant, which was basically stopped that right there because it was basically it was a movie. It is a movie that exists.
Well, back to this one here though, and the idea of it just was a great organic thing to have Ripley as the main character. But straight away, the fact that they give it this air of mystery and kind of strangeness to it because it's set 57 years in the future.
Yes.
So she comes into this world where everything that she has loved has gone. And it's just, it doesn't get any better for Ripley ever.
And if you have not seen the extended edition, I will say this is one of the few times the extended edition makes a perfect movie even better, because it gives Ripley personal stakes. And I don't think that this is a huge spoiler, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it.
Yeah,
you find out that Ripley had a daughter, and that she was planning to be home for her daughter's 8th birthday. And in that ensuing 57 years, her daughter grew up without her mom, became an old woman, and passed away. And there's this amazing, gut-wrenching scene when Bert comes and sees Ripley and gives her a picture of this elderly woman who you actually, behind the scenes anecdote, that's actually Sigourney Weaver's mother. But she looks at it and she says, I told my daughter I'd be home for her birthday, for her 8th birthday. She starts breaking down. And, you just think, well, that's a nice scene, but what does that have to do with anything? Ripley's connection with Newt is strengthened so strongly by that scene that it takes everything up to a whole other level. So it's just
agreed.
I love the special edition plus the Sentry guns.
Yes, the Sentry gun. But no, that scene is almost like, it's stunning. I understand we had to cut it because of time, but it's so integral to the character's motivation and her drive and her relationships in that movie is that scene. And the fact of the matter is, they also, if they'd left that scene in, there's a scene a little bit later that would have been a lot more strengthened when they go to try to recruit her and they say, look, I know you're just working the docks using forklift because that's all the work you can get. Meaning that her life is flat. It has no meaning whatsoever.
Yep.
She's barely surviving. She's barely getting through. And she's going through a lot of trauma that she's not dealing with. She's not sleeping. The nightmares are consistent. Nothing's good for Ripley ever. Like, this poor main character, our protagonist, is one of those protagonists that goes through absolute hell every minute she's on the screen. And we started off with that with her. And so when she that amazing scene when she finally rings him, Paul Reiser, and says, tell me you're going back to kill them. And tell me we're not going to, save them. We're going to study them. We're going to wipe them out. And he goes, you have my word on it? Wow. That kicks that film into gear immediately.
I just wanted Morgan Freeman's voice to break in and say, he was, in fact, not going to give his word.
He was full of shit. Paul Reiser's fantastic in this.
This
is young Paul Reiser. I think he'd been in a film called Diner before this. But that was it. Like, it was pretty new, and he plays a great little antagonist in this, I think.
Yeah, he's definitely such a worm.
Such a worm, and he's a great worm in this.
James Cameron is fond of putting corporate worms in his movies.
He is.
I love him for that.
And how amazing straight off the bat. Like, this is where we get to see James Cameron, the power of his filmmaking in this film, because he directs that absolute shit out of this film. Like, it's efficient on every level. Like, he's not one for fluff, James Cameron, and we don't get a lot of fluff in this either. Because the moment we're getting onto, we're meeting the crew, the Marines. It's all kind of coming together. We get that great scene with them all eating. It kicks into gear, right? Straight away.
It is an incredibly efficient movie. I remember after I saw the special edition, I thought they should have kept this scene in there. So just as a thought experiment, I said, okay, the scene lasts 3 minutes, 30 seconds. What 3 minutes and 30 seconds could we have cut from this movie to keep this scene? I couldn't find anything that could have been cut from this movie. So I'm just like, yeah, I get it. It's efficient. It's paced fantastically. One other thing about this movie that I think is completely overlooked most of the time is the character of Ripley herself. Because so often, whenever we have a female protagonist, it seems like they go totally out of their way to make her insanely strong to the point that she almost becomes a caricature. And I'm going to point to another character in this movie, even though I love this character, is Vasquez. Vasquez is masculine, tough. She's always got something. Man. Yeah, she is just she's a great character, but she's kind of that stereotypical action female. And I think that James Cameron purposely put her in the movie as a contrast to what Ripley is. Ripley is emotional. She is maternal, and she has so many sides to herself, not only as someone who eventually becomes a warrior, but also as somebody who is a woman and who is a mother. She is such a multi-layered character, and I think it adds more urgency to her mission at the end. She has nothing to prove, but she has everything to gain. And I think that Ripley in this movie is peak female action star. I don't think it's ever been touched again. And it's not for a lack of trying. I'm not saying that it's the only good female action star. I could point to many others. I think Lilu from The Fifth Element is another great example of what you can do with a female action star and not make her just insanely stupid, manly, strong, and unemotional. But I just think that it's never been done better than it is here.
Look, I agree. You mentioned about how the fact that they did really put themselves out there to try to break that stereotypical mold of what an action hero would be. He had to deal with it in one tiny little scene in this film where she goes up to the sergeant and goes, what do you want me to do? I can help. And he goes, well, what can you do, in a very dismissive male way? And she gets into the forklift, right?
It's called a power loader.
Power loader.
Get it right,
please. The space forklift. She gets in the power loader.
I'm forklift certified.
Does a little pose and goes, smiles at him and goes, what do you want me to do? Kind of
Where
thing.
Do you want it?
Yeah, where he wants it. And it's a tad kind of like, the big girl knows what she's doing kind of moment.
Yeah.
But he had to do it. He had to do it. He had to establish that she's independent, that she's not relying on a man, and you have to deal with it because it's the 80s, and that's what the audience is thinking. That really all she is a glorified damsel in distress, and he needed to break that, and he did it.
There, there's another scene that I think does that perfectly, and it kind of shows, I think, one of her steps, one of her characterization steps in this movie, and that's the briefing with the Marines when
Yeah,
she goes in there to tell them what happened, and they start cutting up, and they say, "Oh, it's a bug hunt. It's a bug hunt," and you just kind of see this switch go off in her head because she finally, I don't think she finally, but she sees what could happen and what's probably going to happen to these Marines, and she just looks at them and says, "I hope you're right. I really hope you're right." I just love that because it's one of those few times you can actually see like instantaneous boom characterization, switches flipped. It's great. There are so many great moments.
It's a final flight moment for her
Mhm.
because she could have just pretty well cowered down and okay, well, I've just got to survive myself. But she's like trying to fight back, trying to tell them the horrible truth that they're about to embark on. And it's when she describes it to Jason, it just goes to show how much strength she has as a character, that she's willing to put herself back in there. As she says in that briefing, there was one of them that wiped my entire team out in 24 hours. It's reported that were thousands of them there.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Great.
Now, the second...
It's what my mama used to call a coming to Jesus meeting. Except in this case, it's coming to Jesus, with the little thing that's going to... Boy, that'd be an interesting Jesus movie.
The other really fascinating thing I liked about in the scene with Ridley was her reaction to Bishop.
Oh, yes.
Finding out that Bishop is an android.
Girls got trauma. Girls got trauma.
Oh, yes. And rightfully so.
Uh-huh.
And Bishop played expertly here by Lance Henriksen, who is just knockout in this film. I love that character actor, and he's just wonderful in it. His opening scene with the hand on Hudson's hand with the knife moving still is one of the most exciting, cool things. The film sped up. That's the truth. But the way that he's screaming as the knife's going faster and faster, just what a great intro for a character.
Whenever I was younger in junior high, we had this guy who was just a complete psycho who, this was the 80s, by the way, but he would bring a little knife to school. And he'd put his hand down on this picnic table out on the playground, and he'd do that. And he had so many scars where he had hit his own finger with that knife, but he kept doing it because he wanted to do it like the android and aliens did it. And of course, we're not idiots. We're like, they sped the film up. Quit doing that.
Yeah. We're not silly.
He's trying to escape, but he kept doing it. I think he's in prison now, and I'm not even kidding. I really do. I think he's in prison.
Thankfully, Lance never went to prison.
No, not that we know of. Although, you know what? If he did any serious crimes, let him have one. It's fine.
In the tale of Ripley, he becomes so important for her growth because she has to show an element of forgiveness and then trust. Trust without knowing, in a way, like blind trust at points. She doesn't have a choice. She's put in the situation. She's got to trust this individual or, everybody's toast. And then I think that the third of this trio of excellent characters is Hicks, right?
Yes.
We've got to love ourselves some Hicks. Michael Biehn being peak VA performance, tuned like a mofo Michael Biehn in this film.
Another character that gets a wonderful character arc, going from a grunt to a leader. And I just love that, just watching the way he carries himself at the beginning versus right after Apone dies, and then all the way to the end of the movie, just to see his growth. Because not a lot of people really pay attention to that. But I was watching that thinking, wow, he has a heck of a character arc, and they never really shove him to the front and say, well, you're a leader now.
It's like the worse the situation he got, the more he stepped up.
Yeah, and I love that.
He liked to show that he is a man you can rely on in a crisis. If the shit's about to go down, you want Michael Biehn next year, that's for sure.
And I love Hicks. I love how they contrasted Hicks with Hudson, because in the very beginning, you look at Hicks and you're like, oh, this guy's gonna die. He's a wimp. He's passing out on the drop ship. He's not gonna make
Yeah.
it. Hudson, in the meantime, is just, woo! He's already going there and fired everything. And it's Hudson that has the breakdown, and Hicks is the one that steps up. But I am gonna say also, Hudson has a heck of a character arc as well, because I remember somebody telling me bravery is not the lack of fear. Bravery is you feel fear, but you do it anyway.
Yeah, he
That's
does that.
Hudson. Hudson is a brave character. Everybody talks about, oh, he turned into such a coward. He freaked out, but he stepped up at the end. He did what he was supposed to do.
And R.I.P. Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton left this world too darn soon.
Yeah.
I actually used to work with his sister-in-law.
Oh, wow. There you go.
I was just like, oh, Paxton. Yeah. Yeah, kind of like Bill Paxton. She goes, yeah, he's my brother-in-law. I'm like, really?
There you go.
Tell him he's awesome.
Tell him he's awesome.
It was before
I love him as Chet.
Yeah,
sorry, I threw a weird science reference there.
You stupid buttwad. Future episode on the VHS vault.
Yeah, it has to be, right? But either way, it's the going back to that place, though. There's a familiarity with this film when you go in to watch it, though, because going back to that planet again and seeing a more expanded view of that colony, and seeing the ship still there, that was kind of really cool because it locks you in, because you're like, I know this place isn't good. I don't need to discover it's bad. I already know it's messed up before I even get to the actual planet.
Yeah.
Looks like you're having some radio interference here. He's
It's
currently
okay.
in the drop ship trying to land. While we're talking about, while you're playing around, the model work, the map work, the special effects.
It's some interference for the superstructure.
Yeah, is phenomenal. It holds up. I don't care what anyone says. It holds up magnificently.
I would go a step beyond and say not only does it hold up, it surpasses in many, many ways. The Sulaco is a beautiful model.
It's like a gun. It always reminded me of a gun in space flying.
The drop ship, I think, looks great. The crash of the drop ship, I know it is rear projection, but it looks so good.
So well done.
So great. And I even love the little tank thing that they took. I can't remember the transport. That was I want to say that was a repurposed what do you call it? No,
I know what they are. They were old tug vehicles for Boeing. They used to pull in planes.
I just loved it. I thought it was so cool.
It was a brilliant choice because it looks so futuristic and cool and armored up. You know, one of the other thing is the weaponry in this is so on point. Like, it's weaponry we remember and understand from war movies and stuff like that, but upgraded. Like their little miniguns attached to a gimbal on their hip gives it this futuristic look, but it's really a couple of people just holding some miniguns. But the weaponry, the fact that we always see the countdown of the bullets.
Yes.
Do you notice that at times?
I love that.
Oh, yeah, things are running out, and I love that. And the whole sonar, like he is able to suck so much tension, add so much tension with that sonar screen alone. It's unbelievable. Like you're on the edge of your seat.
The sound effect of things getting closer, it's almost like the Sonic movie whenever he's running out of air, that because it just goes and just I don't know, it's like James Cameron just had he had an endoscope stuck into my fear center, because there are so many. Even today there is a scene in Aliens I can't watch it because it just triggers me so severely. It's when Bishop is put into the tube and he has to do this. Every single time. Just the whole idea that they weld him in there and he has to do this all the way through. That you want to talk, if one thing had gone wrong and he would have gotten stuck, that would have been the end. And I know
Yeah.
he's an android. I know there's like, oh, it doesn't count. He's not real. But that's all I can do is just focus on arms
Yeah.
pinned right next to you inside of a metal tube you can't get out of. I cannot even talking about it right now. My hands are shaking. I'm the same way with The Descent. The Descent freaks me out
Yes.
so badly.
Well, the one main reason that tension is so thick in this film and so well executed is the way James Cameron filmed everything.
Yes.
How tight everything's filmed. Remember, he had only 6 alien suits for this entire film.
You
And
wouldn't
we
know.
got the scale of this film where we thought there were hundreds of them.
Yeah.
But in fact, in any one time, maximum amount of aliens you saw was 6. And that's the way he shot it. That's because the tension he has built up in the audience, that anything you get to see looks grander and scarier than what really is, because he's a master in storytelling. And that's why you are locked in. Like, I don't think I've ever walked past this film or turned this film on and been able to get up and walk away from. And I don't say that so purposely. No, it is like glue. The moment you're in for this ride. You know what's going to happen, but you're in anyway.
You know, it's funny that you say that there's only 6 alien costumes, because I immediately think of Alien versus Predator, where there's a scene where there's, I think, 3 predators on top of a pyramid, and there are 100 aliens just like jumping over each other to get at them.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that. Now, I'm going to say again, I like Alien versus Predator, the first one.
Me too. That's a bit of spoiler alert.
Yeah, but that scene to me just had no stakes. It had no tension. And James Cameron takes 6 suits and just creates the most tense and unnerving situations that I think the cinematic screen has ever had the privilege or displeasure of being shown. And it's just, I don't know. I think that filmmakers need to go back to less is more. You know, go back to the Godzilla -1 treatment for movies, where we are locked into a low budget, and it's not. Don't look at it as a hindrance. Look at it as a challenge. I want to see James Cameron make a movie for 15 mil.
Yeah.
I bet you he could do it, and I bet you he'd do it.
I don't think we're going to say it, because he's pretty well billions of dollars invested in.
Oh no, he's. Well, I do
but
it.
He's capable.
I have Avatar 6 through 18 to film, and each one of them has a budget of $42 kajillion.
That's right.
We're actually creating the planet Pandora out in orbit of Mars right now.
That's it.
I'm genetically creating kitty people. Meow.
It really is a masterclass in filmmaking, but it's also what's also great about this film too. It takes an existing lore, which was pretty tight, and expands on it. We do get an expansion of the lore, of the species, and even of the company, which is a big deal. Boo to the company.
Boo to the company.
They are the hidden bad guy in this entire franchise that we kind of deal with later on. But at this stage, we're getting more of that, which I really love. And of course, the introduction of the Queen, the Queen alien, which made total sense for the life cycle of what they created, even though this is a change to their life cycle. Where do the eggs come from? She lays the eggs.
Yep.
In the earlier version of Alien, which we spoke about, apparently the face hugger would turn the human being into an egg.
Yep.
So they've changed it now, but I do like this better, because I'm telling you, that end scene where you're seeing those eggs go through that sack, and she's laying all those eggs, freaking cool. So I like the change anyway. For me, I like the fact they've gone with the Queen.
It works. It works. And you know what? It was a deleted scene. To heck with it. If it's a deleted scene, it doesn't count.
Yeah. Absolutely. The deaths, right, in this film, the way people die, really scary and tragic. You kind of mentioned it before, but we don't see people die and are not just left with, oh, he's dead. I was left with pure, and I still am pure, like you said earlier. Oh man, he's dead.
Yep.
Well, you got emotional attachment, even though small. You do have one with the characters of these films.
You do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say at the very beginning, because I don't think that I don't think Werbowski's death hits nearly as
No.
hard as Vasquez and Gordon
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But the ones who survive that initial attack, absolutely, you do become attached to them. You become emotionally invested in them.
Great scene.
Even Hudson, who you're just like you don't know he's going to step up. You think he's going to crack. You're just like, I want you to be okay, my guy.
Yeah.
You just need a hug.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that I honestly believe that all of the characters after the initial assault who make it to the barricade, each one of their deaths matter, and each one of them is important. Even Burke,
Yeah.
Burke the douche. He has just
Yeah.
he's
Death
done
must
in by
matter.
his own worminess.
Yep.
And there's somewhat of a tragedy to that because honestly, all he wanted to do was get home.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I wanted him to get home. I wanted him to get
No, but yeah. They all
Is
underestimate
that
it,
company
you know.
going to protect you now, Burke? I don't think so.
It's a genuine surprise to see Bishop back at the end of this to kind of save the day. Well, 50%
Well,
Bishop.
half of him, yeah.
Yeah, 50% Bishop. But it works really well because before that point, you're like, man, I don't know how they're getting out of this. Like, there's no way. It's over, sucked into space, and there he is,
Oh, yeah.
saving the day. And it's really great. It's wonderful, and it was such a great ending to this film. It was such a victorious win that we saw Ripley, Hicks, Newt get out of it and survive to a
Yeah.
hopeful future, Jason, where wonderful things were going to happen.
Oh, yeah, and nothing bad is ever going to happen to any of them. Can
However,
Blonsky please make his Alien sequel, please, so we can fix it? I want to give out one last shout out, and that is to the great John Horner, who orchestrated the incredible music to this. James Horner was a Star Trek composer as well, and if you listen really carefully, especially whenever they're coming to land on the platform, whenever she has to go and confront the Queen alien, you're gonna hear the cannibalized Star Trek II score as the thing lands. And I love it because I was watching that movie thinking, this is a great movie. I love this movie. This is great. Is that Star Trek II? No, it can't be. But yeah, terrific score. I honestly think that the ending would not have been anywhere near as impactful without that amazing, dung, 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 dun, 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 dun. Just
Yeah,
I love
amazing.
it. I just love
Epic.
that score. It's one of my favorite film scores ever.
Yeah, and very much his soundtrack is shaking you through the whole film, and then right at the end of the film, he slaps you across the face. Like, that's the soundtrack. And you're okay with it. You're okay with it.
More, Daddy, more.
Filmed with a $18.5 million budget, it blew out the box office $183 million in 1986 dollars, making it the second highest grossing film of that year. It was beyond a hit. It was a global sensation, this film.
I believe it, and I believe, if I'm not wrong, Sigourney Weaver was nominated for Best Actress for this movie.
Oh,
if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not
Golden Globe.
Yeah,
it could have been a Golden Globe.
Whatever the case is, she deserves everything that would have come at her because, this apparently she didn't know much about this at all. She was in France doing another movie, and she just gets a script saying, aliens, and she didn't even know it's going to be about her. Didn't know anything about James Cameron. Read it, liked it, went and met with him.
Yep, nominated for Best Actress 1987 for Aliens.
Yeah, and she deserved it because it is. Do you think, okay, go back to that conspiracy about that missing scene at the beginning. If that scene was in the theatrical release, would that have been the scene that pushed her over the edge? You could argue yes. Well, it's a big scene, Jace. It requires a lot from her acting skills.
Possible. I would have to see who she was up against. Well, I also think that the Academy Awards, I think that the Oscars, very biased against science fiction and horror, which Aliens is both.
Yeah.
I think that every now and again they give out a token nomination to somebody, but I don't think that they seriously ever consider giving the award to them. Now I'm going to say again, I'm taking a look and seeing who she was up against. I think that yeah. Let's see. Here we go. 1987. She was up against Kathleen Turner for Peggy Sue Got Married, Sissy Spacek for Crime of the Heart, Jane Fonda for The Morning After, and Marlee Matlin for Children of a Lesser God, who ended up winning.
Marlee Matlin.
Marlee Matlin. And I say that as somebody who is a huge Sigourney Weaver fan, an Alien fan. Marlee Matlin deserved it. So
yeah, and
I'm
you know
sorry,
what?
Sigourney, I still love you.
And Kathleen Turner and Peggy Sue Got Married is a sublime performance. She's wonderful in that film. Forgotten about film.
She was also Sigourney Weaver was also nominated in 1988 for Gorillas in the Mist and lost to Jodie Foster in The Accused. Again.
No, you can't say no to Jodie Foster, can you?
I know. I want to say she was nominated another time, but I don't see it on here.
Did you know that H.R. Geiger in this film wasn't allowed to work on this film? The original designer was unable to be involved with the Aliens production because, according to Gale Ann Hurd, he had been contractually obligated to poltergeist to the other side. And so therefore was unable to work in the alien creature. Luckily enough, everyone else was able to harvest from his initial drawings. But yeah.
I did not know he worked on Poltergeist 2, but now that you mention it, I can totally see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally see it.
Yeah.
That creature at the end was very Geigerish.
Have you ever met anyone or read anything about this movie that is negative?
Have I ever talked to anybody who has a negative opinion of this movie?
Yeah. I'd say no.
I try not to allow that kind of negativity in my life. No, I have never met anybody who has a negative opinion of this movie. I think maybe I've talked to a couple of people who have said, well, I haven't watched it because I don't like horror movies or I don't like scary movies, but no, I've never once.
And you never talk to those people again. They don't like horror films.
No, that's the first thing I ask in speed dating.
Yeah.
What do you think of Aliens? Nope. Bye.
Magnificent film, holds up brilliantly. The fact that they did what they did with this film, at the end of 86, you were going, bring on Alien 3, and the buzz about the third movie maintained through 87, 88, 89, to eventually 90 when we get Alien 3, which will be our next Alien film we'll be discussing in 2 weeks, Jason. But before then, we're not done.
One of the first times it's the first time I can remember a teaser trailer straight up lying to us about what the movie was going to be. Yes. I remember that. I remember sitting there in the theater going, in 1979, they said that in space, no one can hear you scream. But in 1992, you will find out that on Earth, everyone can hear you scream. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, because it implied heavily on Earth. Yeah.
It was not on Earth.
And there was actually, if you see the making of Alien 3, there never was a version. A real version, a script version. No. There was that wonderful version when they were on a planet where everything was made of wood.
Yeah, and that would have been cool. That would have
been something very different. But we'll talk about that then. But we're not going straight to Alien 3 next. We are staying in space. We're going to a sequel to the greatest science fiction film. Well, it's got to be, right? In the museum of what the greats are, this is the greatest science sequel.
Before you reveal what it is. Yeah, before you reveal what it is, I have to explain, because this was my choice. I have to explain my thinking here. Because this is a sequel to one of the greatest science fiction films of all time, and some would argue one of the greatest motion pictures of all time.
Yeah.
It was a sequel that was made about, 15, 20 years later. and
Yeah.
tonally completely different. It's the first movie is considered kind of like an art house movie. This one is more accessible. It's more mainstream,
Yeah.
and I like it. I love it actually, and to me, it just does not get any love. So for our next movie, we are going to venture to the far off future year of 14 years ago, and we are going to watch 2010, the year we make contact. So strange. It's got a subtitle that actually never appears in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was all over the posters and everything. This is a fascinating pick, Jason, because I have seen this movie once on VHS in the 80s. I've never gone back and revisited it. I think I was too young when I watched it. So for me, I'm really keen on this because it's going to feel like watching something new again.
I
Um,
saw this movie before I saw 2001. And
wow.
I just remember watching it thinking, this is the coolest movie I've ever seen. I can't
Uh,
wait to see the first movie. And then I watched the first movie and I was like, little 10-year-old me going, what the hell is this? But I
did
have
that monkey
matured.
really kill all the other monkeys? Yep, he
Why
did.
is no one saying anything? Why, Daddy? Why are you eating those mushrooms during this last part? I I will say, as I got older, I appreciated the first movie a lot more. It is one of my favorites, and I actually, if you read the book, the movie's a lot better. Uh, but yeah, I think 2010 needs more love, and I'm hoping to shower it with some more love when we look at
Brilliant.
it next
Well,
week.
that's what will be next on the VHS Vault, guys. We will see you next time. Mm, mm. I've always wondered the drool on the aliens. Wonder what it tasted like. I know it's a gross thing, but I remember thinking that once. Like,
I'm
is it
thinking,
salty?
I'm thinking it would be like an unflavored gummy worm.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. And what is it? Is it their sweat? Is it their saliva?
I'm thinking
Or
they're
is it
like
something way,
toads
way
and
worse?
frogs where they just secrete mucus all the time and it keeps them from drying out.
Oh, so we could lick the back of an alien and like be tripping out.
Well, I'm thinking whenever an alien like punches its tongue through your head, it instantaneously just sends all of that neurotoxin into your brain, and
Oh, so
instead of seeing an alien over you, everything just burst into like cartoon flowers.
I want to die by an alien.